Now, how do people come in? I think everyone's filtering in now. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We're just waiting for everybody to also join us. So perhaps whilst that's happening, it would be really lovely if you could just drop in the chat, assuming most of you are in London, given that tonight is about leaving London, but perhaps share in the chat if you have any ideas of where you would like to move to, elsewhere in the UK or in Europe or further afield, just to get some conversation going and to get some inspiration for the sorts of things you guys would like us to focus on tonight. Oh, Lindsay's interested in moving to Porto. Well, we've got Jonny from Lisbon here tonight. He might be able to help. Jessie, the Escape team are actually based in Brighton, although we're looking to move further afield. And we've got all the good bees in Britain, Brighton, Bristol, Bath, they all appeal. Ida's moving to Seoul. How exotic. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Emily to Nashville. Wow, this is so exciting. I am so intrigued to see what happens to London over the next few months. Okay, should we make a start, Loz, with intros and things?
Yeah, sure. Just briefly, I'll say quickly, if for people that are here, if you have a question at any point in this, then you can either stick it in the chat or in the Q&A function, and then we'll have time for questions at different points. But we'll yeah, if you pop it there, then when we get to that section, we'll pick out some of the questions, however many we've got time for.
Fab. Hey. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name's Stacey. I work for Escape the City as a career coach and on their Career Change Accelerator program. Escape as a team, we help people find and create work that matters to them and the world. So we have a huge community of employers and a huge community of talent looking for work, and we also have 1,500 alumni who have done startup and career change programs with us. Across all three networks, we have found a trend of, particularly since COVID, but over 2020, people looking to leave London and find work outside of London. So we thought that it would be a useful session to host some of our alumni this evening who have been there and done that and taken the leap and moved outside of London to elsewhere in the UK or further afield, and to share their experiences in doing so with you guys. So I will ask the panel to introduce themselves in a moment. Just like Lauren said, we do have the Q&A function and the chat function. So if you just want to be a hype person for people talking and share some love, then please do drop that in the chat. If you have specific questions that you want any of the panelists to respond to, please put those in the Q&A with the name of the panelist and the question. We're going to talk as a group until about 20 past, and then we'll have 10 minutes for those audience Q&A. So we'll try to get to those at the end of the session. Awesome. Okay, great. So I'll introduce everybody. My name's Stacey. I'm going to facilitate the discussion tonight. I lived in London for 10 years, but moved to Brighton in 2015. And in August this year, I went totally remote and have been living in my campervan and traveling around Europe. And I'm currently just outside of Gibraltar on the south coast of Spain. Hello, Lisa. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure, why not? So, hi everyone, my name's Lisa. I used to live and work in London in 2016, 2017. I was an executive assistant to the CEO of a high-end company, I guess, before deciding to leave London to go freelance. I stayed down south for a little while longer. I moved to Brighton first, actually, before then making the move up north. I've been in Manchester for about 2.5 years, just over 2.5 years now, and still freelance, still going strong. And I'm a freelance translator. I translate English into German because I'm originally from Germany, so German is my native language. I also do copywriting and I teach German as a foreign language. So yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Kiran, what's your leaving London story?
Hello. So I moved to London when I was 17, a really long time ago now, for university. And then, like most people, I decided to stay on. My last role when I was in London was working as a commercial analyst for Universal Records. So I was in music and entertainment. After about 10 years, giving away my age, I guess, over 10 years actually, over 10 years in the capital. In 2014, unfortunately, I had an accident which meant I had to move back to Birmingham, near family. However, pretty quickly, I was able to repurpose my skills to suit the Birmingham job market. And I pivoted pretty quickly from music into automotive, which is pretty massive here as manufacturing in Birmingham. I guess from there, the fact that I was able to have more time, space, I was able to try a lot of new things. I was able to have the capacity to try things, different things. And when I worked within automotive, it was contract-based. So I was able to freelance and create my own business. And through freelancing and creating my own business, it really gave me the freedom to try lots of new things. A few things like moving to Kenya for a short period of time to work in social enterprise. And once I did, I was absolutely hooked. And from there, I've literally been working in social enterprise in the charity sector. And this year I was working for Social Starters as a consultant. Again, still going strong as a social enterprise consultant, but I guess now I'm more on the entrepreneurial route where I'm kind of kickstarting new ideas and projects. And I guess it's enabled me to see work in a different light. And I've had the headspace and capacity to do that in Birmingham. That's what the move has allowed for me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Jonny from Lisbon, what's your story?
I'll mute myself. How long have we got? It's quite a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. So this probably does make me sound older than everybody else. But I'm born and bred in London. So I've been there for 38 years, never lived abroad. I guess I've done a fair bit of traveling, but have been wanting to get out of London my whole life, pretty much. Or certainly for the last 10 years. So I guess in terms of how easy was it for me to leave London? I guess that's the question we'll come on to. It was dead easy. As soon as COVID started and Brexit, it's kind of a no-brainer. I was one of the first members, or one of the few first members on Escape the City many years ago. So I've had lots of different careers, lots of different jobs. Some of the coaching I now do is around helping people to not just figure their stuff out, but more of a sort of idea and sort of not data, but, you know, coming up with ideas rather than just sort of looking back at everything they've done and actually being a bit more proactive in just getting people to try things, because that's exactly what I've done over the last 10, 15 years. Is just from banking to food to charity sector. I mean, I've done a lot of jobs and a lot of careers. And I'm now involved in a startup with a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time. I am always coming up with business ideas, and some that have worked, some that have not. But I have quite a good setup with a guy that I know in the startup. And because of COVID and because of just the way that the world is right now, I was able to move to Lisbon. And so I'm working here remotely, doing a bit of coaching on the side, still trying to come up with business ideas. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am.
Great, thank you. And Tom in Newquay.
Hi, I'm Tom and I'm based in Newquay in Cornwall. I was in London for a couple of years from about 2014, I believe. I was working in superyacht underwriting Brighton the Square Mile. During that time, I found myself sort of skipping back and forth to the coast, sort of almost on a weekly basis. And then I think it was sort of middle of summer during a heat wave, I just decided to leave London and head to Cornwall. I've been based here for about 5 years now, and I'm currently running a recruitment company and a co-working space in the centre of Newquay. And yeah, it's quite an interesting time, as we've been mentioning. Yeah, people have been wanting to leave London for a while, and COVID has sort of accelerated things for some people with working remotely, and it seems like quite an exciting time down here for people wanting to do that.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to bring the van down to Cornwall. And last but not least, hi Laura in Copenhagen.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Laura. I am originally from Germany as well, like Lisa. And I moved to London 4 to 5 years ago in the midst of a career change, moving from UX testing and user research into wellness and well-being, and done the startup accelerator with Escape the City, where I founded my own company, Palms Up Club, which I'm running online, where I help yoga teachers and wellness entrepreneurs to go online and enhance their impact, and just kind of like bringing my tech knowledge into the wellness world. And that's what I've been doing now since 4 years. In June, I moved kind of short notice from London to Copenhagen, and it's been a very crazy ride. And but yeah, slowly settling in. So the move has been really fresh for me. It's just been a few months, and I'm continuing to run my business online from here, and also starting up some consulting work in user research again, just as a side project, and slowly building my network now here.
Great. Well, it's lovely to have you all here, and how inspiring to hear that so many of you have not only moved location but pivoted your skills and services to other industries and sectors in the meantime. It's very inspiring to know that our options are definitely not limited by leaving London. If anything, it's quite the opposite. We will be sending out a follow-up to everyone with all of your guys' details on. So if any of the audience have heard things that they would like to follow up with, or find out more about your own businesses and ventures and projects that you're doing, then we will make sure we include all of those links so people know where to find you. I guess I have so many questions for all of you. One that I'm intrigued to hear about is how you chose where to go. So if we've made the decision that London isn't for us for our next career move, how did you choose where to go? So is there any of you that didn't know where you were going to go, and then you kind of did like a pros and cons or a comparison of different locations? What was that decision making process like for you? Yes, Jonny.
So I guess I a bit like Laura, I've only been here for 2 or 3 months now, so still getting settled. But before I decided on Lisbon, and I have been to Lisbon a few times, so it was always on my radar. But before I actually chose Lisbon, I was looking at Cape Town and I was looking at Toronto, and I spent maybe 6 months doing a sort of pros and cons of all of them. And I guess I ended up going Lisbon because just because of COVID. I didn't think being in Cape Town was particularly where I wanted to be. Toronto was probably a little bit far away for now. And so Lisbon's in the same time zone. But yeah, it was only really 3 months ago that I just went, sod it, I'm just going to go to Lisbon and book my flight and never look back.
Awesome. And anyone else on how you chose where to go? Yes, Kiran.
I guess just to add, or maybe cement on what Jonny has said in terms of that kind of, I think that sod it attitude is a little bit important, I think, because I think you can weigh up options only so much, and you can't really kind of think your way through to doing it. It is a leap of faith, a part of it, a percentage of it, and it is a brave thing sometimes to do if you have your social networks and kind of support group really established where you are. So I do echo kind of what Jonny is saying in terms of a part of it being a solid attitude and a slight leap of faith. And I am listing that I'm from Birmingham, but the freelance opportunity, my freelance business enabled me to spend maybe a year on the East African continent as well. And we are 100% remote now. So there's a lot to be said for that also.
And just to add to that, if I may, on the sort of SODIT approach, I guess, I mean, I've been on the Escape the City, kind of mailing list and part as a member for a long time now. And probably what a lot of us have in common, or a lot of the people that are watching, is that sort of imposture, should I do this? I don't know what to do. And you keep going around in circles. And it's the same with, if you want to get out of London and you're looking at where to go, before you blink, it might be another 6 months, a year, 2 years, at which point you've just waited. I mean, not wasted, but you just got to just pick somewhere and just do it. And if worst comes to worst, and I had to sort of tell this to myself, worst comes to worst, I can just go back to London. Like, that's not a bad outcome, really. It's like, the upside is really go to somewhere new and try it out.
Great. Yes, Tom.
What I'd add to that is if you are looking to go somewhere new and you don't have a sort of support network there, try and look at places where you can get involved with the local community or local clubs, just to make it easier to settle in and sort of find an initial friendship base. There's all sorts you can do across any of your interests or even your work. And I think that's really, really important to sort of bridge the gap as you move from London that's like super social all year round to somewhere that may be a little bit quieter, or there's a tight-knit community. If you look at getting into like clubs, societies, I'd highly recommend that.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any examples of how they started building their new community in their new locations? Yes, Laura.
So I moved to Copenhagen together with my partner, and it was a really short notice kind of thing, even though we thought for quite a long time maybe Copenhagen could be a good place to be, because I'm from Germany, he's from Sweden, so we're kind of looking for a home base, and also going back to European mainland and the EU, because we're both from there. And I think for us, it was great that we moved with a co-living space. So there's a bunch of co-living spaces where they have a big startup community as well, because it's a lot of expats and startup people who are traveling around and moving in, and everything has been furnished. It's been great to meet people because they have a big community already. So moving into there's these co-living spaces that are really for young professionals and expats, and that has been a really, really great starting point. Actually, it has been, of course, more difficult because of COVID and the social distancing measures. So when I moved here, I was suddenly really aware, wow, I'm starting from zero again, like when I moved to London. But how do I start? Even co-living spaces and co-working spaces, we're still closed. So looking for co-living spaces has been, or living in a co-living space has been amazing for me to build a network immediately.
Great. Kiran, Jonny, do you want to add your examples?
Kiran, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think when I first moved to London, I found it amazing that there were really amazing opportunities in terms of co-living spaces to really get to know people. And so for me, first when I was at university, I had the whole university network and all of that, and then you're kind of thrown out into the real world. But then in London, I feel like it's a city that never sleeps, and it seemed quite easy to build networks and communities, and everyone's quite hungry to meet people. But I do think that when I initially moved to Birmingham, it was really difficult because I'm quite a social vampire, and I didn't find that it didn't hit me in the face straight away. So I thought, okay, this is now a bit of a rare breed. But I think what was important is that I then I had to be more proactive in joining kind of meetups and volunteering and giving up my time and kind of going to talks and trying to find things to do in social settings that perhaps weren't necessarily just kind of going to the pub and things like that. So building a network was probably a little bit harder, but I think more exciting, and you just had to get a bit more creative with the avenues, I think, but then definitely rewarding once you've kind of put the work in, for sure.
Great. I think like now is quite a scary time from a jobs perspective, obviously with COVID and many people, redundancy and furlough being a risk, and it can feel like moving location is just another risky endeavor at a time when everything else feels quite uncertain as well. I think us guys in the escape community feel quite comfortable with trying new projects and taking on new things and joining new communities, because we see that as building resilience and giving ourselves optionality. If you are someone now who's in London who perhaps doesn't want to leave their job, but is interested in moving location but wants to have a bit more security, do you have any tips for how you can kind of de-risk yourself, or maybe try and stay in a job whilst you're moving locations? Any thoughts on that? Yes, Tom.
When I left London, I actually managed to go remote for a set. Well, I left London, but then my old boss said, you know, what are you doing? Do you want to come back to London? And that sort of thing. I said, you know, no, because the lifestyle didn't suit me. And I kind of just closed it down and said, yeah, I'm not going back, not for me. But then he actually came back to me and offered a remote option. And I think at the moment, because everyone sort of proved that you can work remotely, and if you communicate well with your employer, I think it's the perfect opportunity to show that you can do your work from anywhere, and to almost put more effort in to make sure that sticks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, employers are learning just as much as employees right now that remote work is possible for a lot of different types of jobs and organizations. Laura, I know that it's slightly different because it's your own business, but you were essentially carrying on with doing what you were doing in London in Copenhagen. What concerns did you have? How have you managed that? Does it feel like there's been consistency in your career since making the move?
Yes, it has. I think I kind of underestimated what the changes would also mean for my business, because I thought I do everything online. I can teach yoga online. I have my online community. I've built an online business. So I kind of played it down a little bit. But when I got here, I realized that with a move into a new like space, country, city, whatever, everything changes around you, and that takes up a lot of your energy as well. You know, suddenly you have to deal with all the admin, meeting people, and just meeting a lot of people because I also felt during summer, now I have the chance to go out to meet people, because in Denmark there weren't many restrictions, and who knows when the second wave comes. So it really felt like, you know, I don't have much time to really meet people and get out there. So I think I just underestimated the energy it just takes once you get to a place with all the admin and the move and settling in and learning so many other things every day, that and also moving just before summer was also kind of a bad time, or maybe a good time, who knows, because business of course is always slower during summer. So of course it was a bit of a weird beginning phase. I literally just sat down, opened my laptop, and I was like, okay, here I am, let's do this, I guess, because you don't have a team, you don't have a routine, a structure yet. So that has been just the discipline also takes to build a new routine again in this new place, and to get out there more than, you know, you were used to before, because you already had your network. And I think that's one thing I underestimated. And of course, I'm a solopreneur, so for me, I don't have a big legal team or anything like that around me, and I'm just trying to figure all of this out, especially with Brexit. Nobody knows what's to happen. So so there's still a lot of questions of, you know, keeping the business in the UK, registering it here, what are going to be the implications. And I think these are just some things that were hard, but on the other hand also coming here also is really, I've also wanted to see it as a chance to have new opportunities, to start fresh, also maybe with my career and my business a little bit, to reconsider which direction do I want to go. And new opportunities have opened up now already, which has been amazing to see, just by meeting people and suddenly realizing we're working in a similar field. Now I'm going to do some consultancy work in a project like that. So there are new opportunities that can also open up. And now I really feel it took a few months to kind of get going, but I do feel that I could just continue doing my work now, and new opportunities are also opening up again.
Great, thank you. Is there anything that you guys wish you had done before you left London? So any more preparation or research or anything you would have done before you left? Yes, Jonny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wish I had just left London earlier. That's probably my only thought now that I've done it. But I think Lisbon, I saw there was quite a few people that were saying they wanted to move to Portugal, and definitely do it. It's awesome. But Lisbon is a slightly weird property market here, where either you have to sign really long leases or it's through Airbnb. But of course, you can't look at your Airbnbs because you have to book it. So it took me 4 weeks to find somewhere, and just exactly like Laura said, the admin and the stress of trying to find somewhere when you're trying to settle and trying to carry on working, it is quite a burden. Not to say I mean, it's not a massive deal, but it's something to be aware of, that maybe wherever you decide to move, and I don't know, maybe moving within the UK might be more familiar, but if you're going somewhere abroad, you know, just make sure that you check out the property market.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think from my experience moving into a van, I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about property because my home is with me all of the time. So I didn't take any time off, and I actually was so it was so important to me to prove to Escape and to prove to my other contractors that I can work from anywhere now, that I have internet, that I didn't take any time off. And it was really hard the first couple of weeks getting used to a new lifestyle, and I wish that I'd given myself a little bit more space to actually settle in and maybe taken some holiday time and then gone back into work. Yes, Laura.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We moved on a Monday, and it was literally like the middle of the lockdown, or just when restrictions were loosening a little bit. We moved on a Monday, and I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to give myself the week off to settle in. And I thought I was so, yeah, a week will be fine. And then I'm going to give my week off. And then afterwards, I'm going to get back to work. And then it really took me, I think, 2 to 3 months to be at a place where I could really focus again. So I think I would definitely recommend to make sure that you have also some maybe also financial freedom or buffer in this area, or just a plan to know that, it might take you, or it will probably take you 2 to 3 months until, you're slowly finding a better focus again, and to allow for more space. And that's also, I totally agree with that, Stacey.
Great. Lisa, Manchester is probably one of the places which a lot of people are thinking about, like the northern hub of the UK. And I think that you said you'd been there for 2.5 years or so. Have you noticed, or are you part of a community there where 2020, in the response to COVID, more and more people are moving up north, and does it feel different this year than before?
It feels different in that I've not been into Manchester a lot, because I've mainly been in my house. But I have noticed I'm sort of part of like a Manchester network on Facebook, and I've noticed that a lot of people have actually moved to Manchester. I've noticed a lot of sort of posts coming up being like, oh, I've just moved here, I've recently come here in lockdown, which I found really interesting. I mean, yeah, as I said, I moved here 2.5 years ago now, on a bit of a sodded attitude, actually, and very much like a gut feeling. And I think that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people I met up here, they're either from Manchester and they just never left, or there was something about Manchester that sort of just drew them in. And it was the same for me. I was living in Brighton. I'd never been to Manchester, and I wasn't really happy in Brighton. And just one day I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move to Manchester. I'd never been. There was just something about it. I was like, I want to try it. And a lot of people that I met that are not from here have had sort of the same experience, which I thought was quite interesting. And even with lockdown and COVID going on, people still make the move, which I found quite interesting. But yeah, I've not had the chance, obviously, to meet too many people this year. But last year, a lot of people that I met were either from here and had never wanted to leave because they love it so much, or people have come here and now they don't want to leave. Much like myself, I don't think I'm going to leave Manchester if I don't absolutely have to. So it's a good place to be.
I think you've sold anyone who's thinking about moving to Manchester. I'm also a money coach, so I always ask the awkward finance questions. I guess the stories we tell ourselves is you get paid more in London, but it's cheaper to live elsewhere. How have you guys found those experiences? Like, have you seen significant changes in either your salaries or your cost of living or standard of living outside of London?
I can go. So if I stayed in London, I'd be looking at a 1-bedroom maisonette in a tower block versus Birmingham, where I've been able to afford a 3-bedroom house with a front garden, back garden, 2 cars, bicycle, lots of spare time, and a way more comfortable life.
Great. Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. Looking back at where I lived in London and how much I paid for it, I actually lived in a flat share in London with 3 other people in a rather small house for 4 people, to be honest. Paid an absolute fortune, took me ages to get to work in the morning and back, obviously. Paid a lot for public transport. Sometimes makes me feel a bit dizzy looking back at it and sort of thinking what I've spent on rent and public transport. When I moved to Brighton, it was already much cheaper, but it wasn't as cheap as I thought it would be, to be honest. It was just good because I could walk everywhere. So I sort of saved on the public transport side. Up north, it's just a completely different world. Much like Kiran just said, I live in a 2-bedroom house by myself as well, which I would have never, ever been able to afford anywhere around London even. So I feel like it's definitely sort of a healthier life, because also in London I was just working sort of all the time to be able to afford that flat share, and then I didn't really have a work-life balance either, because I was either working or I was tired from working and I didn't really want to do anything because I was just knackered all the time. Whereas up here it's just much better. Freelance life in general has allowed me to have a work-life balance, but especially up north, it's just it's just become much healthier, I think.
Great. Yes, Tom.
I think if you're in a city and if you're like an outdoorsy person that likes being active and doing things, it's often quite expensive to do. Even do like activities within the town, like a gym membership's expensive, that sort of thing. But I think if you move somewhere where there's a bit more space, whether it's like rural or coastal, that sort of thing, you most of your entertainment can be free. And I think I found when I was in London, I'd spend most of my time in the pub in my spare time, whereas here I find that I'm a lot more active. There's a lot more things to do, which don't cost the world.
Yeah, great. It's slightly different, but I only had a 1-day trial run living in a camper van before I committed to do it for a whole year. And I've already had 2 accidents that have cost over £1,000 to fix the van since I left in August. So anyone thinking about leaving London, I think trial running it perhaps, and like seeing what a week in a new city will be like, and how you'll socialize differently, how you'll spend your money differently, and having some sort of, I think like Laura said, emergency or buffer, or think about any financial safety net that you want to have in place before you leave London, because it might be cheaper, but there might be some surprises with settling in as well. Great. Any other challenges, like perhaps like personal or emotional ones, like what almost made you not make the move, and how did you overcome that? Lisa, then Jonny.
So for me, it was never a question of not making the move. I was just absolutely set on leaving London. There wouldn't have been anything that could have held me back at all. I think it sort of challenges partly was just setting the business up. I didn't have anything lined up. I just left London. I had a little bit of savings. I didn't have a client lined up. I didn't have a job lined up. I had nothing. I just left. And I think sort of the challenge of finding my first client, and also sort of I didn't really know many people that were self-employed or freelance, so I was sort of a little bit on my own. Even my family, my dad is self-employed, so he gave me like lots of tips and tricks, but everyone else was sort of like not really behind the idea of me going freelance. So sort of me trying to set this up, and it's a new challenge and sort of something I need to get used to, paired with a lack of support system, I found that quite challenging. And even when I was in conversation with potential clients, because they were my first clients, lots of imposter syndrome, trying to sell myself as a completely new freelancer, being like, yeah, I'm totally capable of doing this project. I found that quite challenging to make a confident enough impression to then eventually land the first client, which luckily I managed to do eventually. But yeah, for me, it was sort of setting up with little knowledge as well. I just went for it, and I didn't really think about it much. I don't necessarily would do it the same way now, but yeah, I think that's the initial getting started. That was probably the most difficult for me personally.
Great. I'm pleased it worked out for you, Lise. So maybe following on from that then, Tom, Jonny, Kiran, I know that you also found new opportunities with work when you moved. So any practical tips for the audience on how to find new work in new locations? What did you find that worked for you? Yes, Tom.
I think you almost kind of need to take a day or some time out from your day to day to actually like realize what you want to do, and also just have space away from just being sort of bogged down in something, to realize that you are actually good at other things and other ideas will come. So I mean, nothing's ever like guaranteed, so having that direct path to say, okay, right, I'm going to move here with zero risk. Of course, there's always going to be risk, but I think if you sort of open your blinkers and look around a bit more, you'll find that there's actually a lot more opportunities out there. You've got different talents and different skills that you can use, and you know, if some things work great, if others don't, it's not the be all and end all. And I mean, people may think if they're like moving out of London, like there's an expectation from like school mates, uni mates, even parents, like, oh, my son's doing a city job or this and that. Actually, what really matters is your happiness, and whether that is having a high-flying city job, or actually, you know, if you're already working in one of those roles, you're quite intelligent. So there's got to be ways that you can make that intelligence work for you in a better manner.
Great. Any other practical tips on finding work, guys?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I guess a bit like the sod it thing. I think you just need to just do it. I know it's such an overused phrase, but you know, part of the reason I left London, you know, my family there, all my friends there. I've basically spent my entire life there, but it does get a bit samey and a bit stale. And actually, what you realise when you leave London, for example, is actually opportunities open up just because you've just been to a new coffee shop and because you went on this Facebook group that you said you'd never go on, but you now know nobody, so I'm going to do it. And so I think just, you know, if you're someone that's confident and open, then maybe it will come easier to you. If you're not, then it's a great opportunity just to throw yourself in the deep end, be vulnerable, and just speak to people, attend things, do everything that you would never have done. And you'll be surprised actually how easy it is to A, meet people, and B, you just sort of feel alive again. And that's one of the main reasons I left London, because I needed to feel the buzz again, right?
I think I agree with all of that, but the only thing I guess that I could add that's new is that at the moment, obviously meeting lots of different people and social situations and things like that is not necessarily lined up with helping the cause maybe, but I think a lot of the COVID channels are quite useful because I think community spirit is really up and positive at the moment. So in terms of communities getting together to run their own initiatives and kind of looking after each other and helping each other out. So if you can tap into kind of the community-led COVID-19 channels, I think that's also a good practical place to meet people who are doing really great things within the community you're trying to embed yourself in.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. I know that the co-working spaces in Brighton have been awesome communities for me. The Good Business Club in Brighton, I know Enterprise Nation have like local meetups in different areas around the UK. So maybe tapping into those sorts of communities is a really good tip. Great. Does anyone on the panel have children that they relocated with? No, that was a question from Cecily, I think. So Cecile, sorry. We don't have anyone with children. I imagine that makes it slightly more complex a decision. Okay, let's go to see if there are any other questions in the Q&A box. So audience, if you'd like to throw any more in there, then please do that. Does anyone have tips for starting a freelance career when working remotely? That's from Tom. Freelancers out there, any tips for how to find work? Yes, Lisa.
So what I did when I first started out was I literally sat at my laptop for like 8 hours a day and I went through every job website I could possibly find. That's how I started out. And I applied for any project that even sounded remotely interesting. Because truth is, you send out 100 applications and maybe 5 get back to you, and 4 of those are not sending you like a standard email saying sorry they're not interested or something like that. So I genuinely found, not only at the beginning but even still now, I just have a look on LinkedIn, to be honest. Obviously now my network is a bit bigger and that makes it a little bit easier. But when I first left London and I moved to Brighton and I had nothing, I would literally sit at my laptop 8 hours a day, firing out applications, making sure my CV was like top notch and sort of tailoring it to the different job ads. That's literally how I got started. And I still think that's a pretty good way of looking for new projects. It's not like there's tons out there, especially at the moment, I reckon, but then remote opportunities have increased now, so that could be helpful. But yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah, my tip would be to find, and I'm sure everybody's got someone that does something, so find someone that does something that's not the same but it's complementary. So say if you're a copywriter but your friend's a website designer, then speak to your website designer friend, because if they're building websites for people, then presume they're going to need some copy, right? Or they might need some SEO work. Or so you know, collaboration is really good, because then you can find people that are maybe already have the clients, but then they can introduce you to new work without you really doing anything. So that would be my tip, is just to find people that are in the same space doing slightly different things, but at the end of the day, your client is the same person.
I think it depends on where your situation, in terms of whether you figured out what you want to do or not. So if you already know what you want to do and you know what drives you, I think that's pretty much, I don't know, for me anyway, 80% of the journey done. And once you find out what you want to do, then I guess that's a part where hopefully you're feeling that buzz and you're feeling like you want to speak to the people that are in those networks and those communities anyway. And then if you haven't found out what you want to do and you want to try lots of new things, try absolutely everything, which is what I did, if you have the time and the space to do that. And I think the bit that makes your energy come alive again, you'll naturally feel yourself flow more in that direction. So going to virtual events, trying to volunteer, through volunteering, if you're in a new location, that will help you build kind of networks around you as well, speaking to people, being curious, inquisitive, asking lots of questions, and just remembering that it's an exciting journey, I think, and it's not necessarily about where you need to get to. If money is not a major obstacle, it's more about the fact that it's quite maybe a privileged position to be in, to be able to figure out what it is you want to do. Yeah.
Great. And Lauren, who's also here from the Escape team, I mean, Loz, maybe you just want to introduce yourself and see if you've got any thoughts on what we've been talking about.
Yeah, late introduction here, but yeah, I guess similarly, I moved to Brighton. I left a career in book publishing. There's not really a book publishing industry in Brighton or outside of London, really, apart from in different pockets. But I knew I wanted to move to Brighton, and I had no idea what I would do when I got there. So I guess to answer an earlier question, Stacey, about what would you do differently, I think at first I just thought, I absolutely had to get a job in order to be able to do it. And so I just ended up just kind of quite frantically applying to everything and not really taking the time to like research what the opportunities were. But then on the other hand, it meant that I kind of gave myself, I guess, like a period of it was probably about 8 months where I kind of got things wrong a bit, and that's okay, because I was finding my feet. And it was only after being based there and really understanding what opportunities there were and what types of organizations there were, and what I could be doing, that I sort of found where I might like to be. And so the first job I got wasn't the right job for me, but it enabled me to actually make that move. But I kind of gave myself that margin of error, which was quite needed. It took the pressure off myself. But if I didn't get it right first time, that was okay. But I knew I wanted to be in Brighton, so at least that was kind of solid. I guess just to ask other questions from the Q&A chat, there's one here about, has anyone ever lost or not been able to do work because you weren't based in London? So I guess, a bit about if you feel like you've lost opportunities by not being in London, and maybe you haven't, but if anyone can speak to that. Oh, Kiran, yeah.
I would say it depends on the sector. So London does have a large music and entertainment sector, and Birmingham doesn't have anything that rivals it. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, again, it's about transferable skills. So I guess it's just understanding what it is you want to do. If you're 100% embedded in the music industry, all of the top major record labels are in London. But again, with the remote working, we've just proved we can do it anywhere in the world. So.
And did anyone have to convince, so if you moved not on your own, did you have to convince people in your life to move with you, so your partner, or have any of you had to kind of do that? Or maybe you both wanted to move but you weren't quite sure on a destination. Laura, you look like you're nodding.
Yeah, even though I might have been the one that needed to be convinced a little bit. No, I mean, it was clear that we wanted to move, yes. Since a while already, that was always clear that at some point we're going to leave London. And then, of course, with the lockdown, it was just like, okay, you know, it's time to get out of here. And I think for us, it was just kind of like narrowing down a few cities and places that we could imagine to live, and then also visiting places in the years before already, and kind of like already there have been 2 or 3 cities that were like, this could be a good next step. And then for me, I said, I'm just going to continue working. I'm cool with those places. And my partner was then able to just look for jobs. And it was kind of just like, okay, Copenhagen worked out, let's do it. And then we literally moved within a few weeks. But yeah, so it has been, more of a thing of a lot of talks before to narrow it down, and then kind of just, see where whatever would work out. And but I was really happy once the decision was made. I have to say, it felt really, really good, because usually I think for everyone, London life, it's such a bubble to live in London, and you can't, I couldn't imagine to not live in London anymore. It just seemed, even though I wanted to move away as well, but it just seemed crazy, the thought to leave this bubble, and what will life outside of London be like. But yeah, to just kind of like talk it through, narrow it down, and then kind of just maybe also see where opportunities come up and then follow that.
Yeah, just to speak directly to this question as well, it's definitely the idea about the kind of thought of leaving your network, leaving your friends. It was something that I think it did probably take me, even after I'd done it, like a good 6-8, probably a year, to really let go of not being in London all the time, or running up every chance I could get. Like, luckily, Brighton's not far away, but I definitely had to wean myself off it in a weird way. But yeah, actually at the start of this year, I sort of made a kind of pledge to myself before coronavirus that I would not go up to London very much at all. And obviously then kind of hand was forced, but there's some, you kind of can't really have your foot in both places. And I've definitely felt this year, the kind of friends I'd made in Brighton, I've spent a lot more time with them obviously since June than I even would have normally if it wasn't for coronavirus, even if coronavirus hadn't happened, because I was always kind of running up and down to London. I definitely think there's like a period where you have to like detach yourself. I don't know if you found that, Stacey.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I couldn't sleep at night because it was so quiet in Brighton compared to where I lived in London for a few weeks. But I think, I mean, I moving to London and then moving from London and then into the Campervan, I guess mine wasn't really sod it, like the final decision was, but I think looking back, I did a lot more planning than I give myself credit for. So in terms of like, I didn't have a partner in my life to convince to move, but there were people in my life who were nervous about me doing it. So I did things like took a sabbatical from work. I moved down to like working 4 days a week and working from home 1 day a week, and then 2 days a week I had like conversations with my employers about, if this were to happen, what would you need from me? So involving them in helping me set myself up to be able to work remotely, put certain rules in place with my friends, like I need to see one of your faces on FaceTime every day whilst I'm living in the van, please hold me to account for that. Obviously I had a number of visitors lined up that couldn't have come because of COVID now, but that was a commitment we'd made to each other before I'd left. So like actually spending some time getting really explicit on what your fears are, naming them, having those conversations with people who can help you test whether that's a real risk and what you can put in place to mitigate those before you go. So getting really specific and having really specific conversations with the people that this change is going to affect, and then thinking about ways that you can test it if you need to before you need to commit, like sabbaticals, like weekends away in the areas, things like that.
What I would say, I know it sounds obvious, but I speak to a lot of people who says that, you know, if you've got a job in London and you're not a freelancer, you want to move to another city, but you want to keep your job. And I always ask them, have you spoken to your boss? And most of them always say no. And so I think, you know, just communicating with your employer and saying, look, this is what I'd like to do. Hopefully I've proven over the last 3 and 4 months that I can do it. I think you'd be surprised actually how, I mean, not everybody's going to say yes, but I think if you don't ask the question, you'll never know. something that's definitely another tip is just, you know, speak to your boss, speak to people in your life and ask them, what do you think? Because you never know what they're going to say.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really important point. Another question that we had, and it's a very helpful one, is particularly in the times of Brexit, were there any legal or tax barriers or challenges to any of you guys moving, and how did you overcome those? Any good resources that people can use for advice? I always recommend Experts for Expats. I'll put a link in the email tomorrow. You can have like free 30-minute calls with them on tax and legal implications of you moving or working elsewhere. So that's a good resource that I'll share.
For Portugal, I can only speak and vouch for Portugal, but there are, I mean, in a way, there's way too many Facebook groups, so it can be a bit overwhelming, but there's a ton of useful resources in, you know, these digital nomads in Lisbon and British expats in Portugal. So, you know, there's always someone that's done it and there's always someone with an answer to the question. So definitely getting on these Facebook groups, although it can be overwhelming, like you'll definitely find what you need to know. Even if it's just to someone know, like I'm speaking to a tax lawyer at the moment, but I only found out about him because someone posted it on the Facebook group, and he's actually quite good. So Facebook groups is definitely the way forward for
that. Yes, Lisa.
Obviously, I'm in a bit of a different situation because for me, it's almost like the other way around because I'm from Germany in England. So what I'm sort of now dealing with Brexit is making sure I can stay here and sort of get in the settled status and whatever it's called. But with any like tax related things, I think, yeah, getting the help, what Jonny just said, getting a tax lawyer, getting on Facebook and groups, or getting an accountant involved. I found getting an accountant like invaluable with any tax things, to be honest. When I first started out, I didn't really think about anything money or tax related because I was, you know, finding my feet in the freelance world, and I sort of, tax came very late in my thought process, sort of when I was doing my first self-assessment, and I just kind of, I was winging it, to be honest. But getting an accountant involved and sort of having that help and that financial help and the help with taxes and someone putting it into like plain English for me, because quite frankly, I can't sort of decipher what the tax world wants to tell me. It honestly makes me sleep better at night because it just gets to a point when you get sort of, one, when your freelance business grows, but also when things like Brexit happen, or now if income has gone down due to COVID and getting the COVID grant, and what sort of choices do we have in terms of support. I found just getting someone who knows their stuff and just asking them and then them explaining it to me in plain English was absolutely invaluable. So I would always recommend getting professional advice for that.
Yeah, great. And we will share some specific resources in the mail out tomorrow if you did want some leads on tax and accountant professionals and things and places you could look. I'm really conscious of time and I don't want us to go over. So perhaps if we could finish on a high, if I could ask all of you to kind of put yourself back in the shoes of your last day in London before you left, knowing what you know now, what would you be saying to yourself? Really quick sound bites. Just feel free.
I'll start, and it's, I can't wait to get to the beach in less than 10 minutes from my flat.
I'll say, enjoy the gift of time that not being in London gives you. You'll suddenly find there are more hours in the day.
No more tube. Woo!
Path to purpose begins.
I'd say be open for change.
I would say trust your gut and trust the process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. It's been really inspiring and lovely living in a camper van to have a discussion with a group of people too. So thanks for that. We will send out the recording to everybody who listened and everybody who signed up tomorrow, along with the information of where you can find out more about all of our panelists and Lauren and I, and the Escapes memberships program if you were interested in joining a network of people who are doing something different and outside of London, with our email addresses, so you can contact us too. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you to all the panelists for your inspiration and your insights. Good luck everybody on your adventures outside of London, and please do keep Escape updated on any changes you make after this evening. Have a nice rest of your evening. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Right, I shall stop the recording then. Bye, Stacey.
Bye. Thank you, Lauren.